Hey, there are 6 things, count them 6, that you need to do that will separate you from the majority of the companies that are implementing artificial intelligence tools, the vast majority of which will utterly fail to get the results that they want from their implementation. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about why. In the last episode, talked a little bit about why. This time, we're going to go deeper dive on what you need to do. Grab something to write with because here's what it's going to take. Hey, welcome to Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf. Thanks for being part of the conversation. Today is part 4 of why your AI use is going to fail. And I'm not going to recap what we covered up to this point because it's all going to be encapsulated in what we're just about to talk about. Uh, part 3 was focused on you have to have a process in place in order to be able to implement any kind of new technology, whether it's management technology, a software technology, artificial intelligence, whatever it may be. And here's how to take those next steps and make it work. Because over 70% of the companies that move forward with implementing AI are going to fail. We know that because that's the average failure rate for doing anything new, implementing any kind of business process improvement, any kind of productive change in an organization. 70% of the time, you don't get the result that you want. Here's what you need to do differently. Grab something to make notes with because going to lay this out and keep it simple. There's just 6 things. And the first is ready for it. And this is really your 0 step. This is the starting point before you do anything else. Why are you going to make a change? What's the measurable result that you expect from it? And this needs to be stated in the customer's experience, in your team's experience, employees' experience, in terms of the why and how are you going to measure it? Well, how do you measure it now? Do you measure it now? A lot of things when I have found in making changes at various companies over the years, we're not necessarily measuring something or doing it well before we start to change it. There's an issue. No, it can be better, like productivity in a specific context. If measured at all in a specific context, may be better measured in another way. So you need to know why and how you're going to measure that. Even if it can't be measured, some things you just can't take a tape measure to and go, yeah, it's 6 feet long, or it's X units out per hours of labor, per hours of labor in. Can't necessarily be that straightforward with it. Think of it this way. The measure is, can you convict in a court or with enough evidence to get can you come into court with enough evidence to have a reasonable person go, yes, you are guilty of having that situation, so that you've got something to start with. There has to be a why. And it's going to make the customer's experience better. It's making the employee's experience better. How is it helping your team and your company move forward? That needs to be clear. In my book, Perform or Perish, we had a very clear why in that particular case study. Decision was made. The company's going to close its doors forever in 30 days. They're going to shut it down, take all the assets, move it out of California. That was the scenario we had. We had 30 days to prove that it made more sense to reverse that decision, which we did. That was the why, though. That's a very compelling why. Most of the time, it's not that dramatic necessarily. With a lot of what's been happening with rising inflation, supply chain disruptions, the pressure to innovate faster that artificial intelligence tools has brought to the table over the last 8 to 10 months, and this has been happening fast, right? That's creating that kind of pressure, perhaps. We might be going, our profits are getting squeezed so much that we might be at risk of needing to, of shutting down, greatly curtailing, or moving, to another location. So start with that why. Okay, so now that's your 0 step. First step is have a baseline of what you're currently doing. Why you're going to make the change. You know how you're going to measure it. What are you currently doing to achieve that right now? What's the process? And again, it always starts with the customer and works backwards. Why? Who are you serving? The whole purpose for being is solving a problem for the customer. We need everything aligned with what the customer's experience is, what the customer needs so that we can be efficient at providing it and create innovations that can't be copied easily, right? Topic for another time. This is just what's that baseline? What's the steps in the process? Start with the customer, work backwards to make sure that's clear so that then on the next step, step 2, you can look at where do we need to make improvements? What improvements do we want to make in this process? And it might be an error rate with the customer. It could be, for example, if it's a chat bot that you're going to implement for customer service, what does that customer experience look like now? And it may be, you know what, we don't have the bandwidth to do that. This is going to be something that we're adding new. Okay, fine. But the customer is doing something. The customer is experiencing something. If they can't get in touch with you, they are going somewhere else for information. Most likely YouTube. They're going to search the internet, right? So think that through. What does that process look like? So that in the next step 3, you can say, okay, when we make the changes, this is what the new process is going to look like. This is where you get into the, okay, specific to artificial intelligence, what are we going to do? Well, one example we started with there was we're going to have a chat bot that will be first point of contact for customer service. Now, I don't know about you. Most of the chatbots I've come in contact with are just insulting. It makes me not want to do business with the company because it provides zero customer service and also blocks access to talking to a real person or escalating to someone that you can get in touch with, that can actually solve the problem. It just goes in circles. Some of them are great. Now, there are a few companies, and it's always a handful of companies that get it right, partly because they're going through this process. But you want to be one of the companies that's getting it right so that when customers come in contact with the chatbot, they're going, okay, gonna take a first shot at getting a question answered by this chatbot. Now, can't get it answered. Here's a key point of failure in customer service chatbots or any kind of customer service contact. Customer gets first point of contact, ask for a bunch of information so that you know what their issue is, how to guide this looking for information to hopefully solve it before it gets escalated to a next level, whether that would be from one from an entry level live person to someone that's more senior, from a chat bot to an actual live customer service representative or technician, wherever the appropriate place could be account representative to deal with a financial issue. They get all the information. Then the next step in the process, when it gets handed off, they have to resubmit all that information again. We've been through that time and time again. It's insane. It's an electronic system. Once you capture information, you should never ask the customer for it again. And no one should ever have to re-input that information because it is insulting to your customer. It's not respecting your customer. Plus, it makes your internal error rate go up. Every time someone has to enter a piece of information, you have more opportunities for the information to get entered wrong. Now, I don't want to get too in detail with this. This is the what's, not the hows. Just want to give a good example of that. So in customer service, it could be that in your strategic planning process, you're going to institute the use of large language models like ChatGPT. How does that fit into the flow of the creation of ideas and information? How's it documented? Where's that archived? How is it retrieved? Right? In the process, this is laying it out on paper for the new process. This isn't implementing it yet. Because before you can implement, then you need to come to the next step. Step 4, we started with step 0. So this is step 4, which is identify what kind of training is going to be needed. What is new, right? So in step 3, you're looking at what the new process is. We're answering the question of what technologies are being implemented where. And maybe picking up on this theme, this is a generic process for installing any kind of new technology into your organization, whether it be something that's considered, quote unquote, soft technologies like neurolinguistic programming for communication and influence. It could be installing new leadership technologies. And yes, there's technologies in that. It could be software, could be a robot in a factory floor. There's a wide range. Anything new like that, and any major process change, any business process change, this is the steps you need to follow. So let's come back to in 3, we're looking at what technologies are being installed where. How does that affect the process? 4, and this is a major point of failure for most companies, identifying what kind of training is needed. You're going to change the process. That means training is needed for the people that are going to be using the new process. Otherwise, SneakerNet is going to defeat your new process. People are under performance requirements. So, under the pressure of performing, if they're looking, going, I just really don't understand this screen. I've been waiting on hold for 10 minutes to get in touch with the software providers, customer support or technical support to get an answer to a question. I already spent an hour looking for it in their knowledge base online. It's like, click, and I'm going to write it on a piece of paper. I've seen this in factories a lot. Write it on a piece of paper. I'm going to walk across the factory and hand it to the person so that I can get an authorization to release a tooling, an authorization to release something into, someone may have signature authority that they need to review something and they can't figure, and so it's up to them to release it to the next step in the manufacturing process, but they can't, there's a problem in the software, there's a glitch, something isn't working. They're beating their head against the screen and they're just like, the heck with it. I'm going to take the written, this gets me all choked up because it defeats the millions of dollars the company spend on software. But they take a written authorization. This happens in a lot of different ways within process. So you need to focus on what's the training, what's the support. Now, training also includes coach. So you have training, formal training. Then there's the coaching on how to do it, people supporting each other, managers supporting their staff. How are your managers being prepared to coach the people that are going to expected to do something different? What does that change in the manager's life as well? Same holds true for you as a business owner, for you as a key executive. How does that affect you? How are you going to coach them? How do you hold them accountable to not allowing SneakerNet to defeat your new process? Right. So looking at those kinds of changes in the training, the coaching. Also, is there a user group? Third, is there a user group? This is common with software. When I was at an aerospace company that used Unigraphics for their product design, product development and design, was involved in a major upgrade and integration of new technologies into that. We upgraded the version to the latest and greatest version of the Unigraphics CAD/CAM system, as well as bringing a whole bunch of new tools and other process integrations into that. The user group for Unigraphics was hugely important because that gave a place for people to share best practices, to help each other. Coaching, so there's a lot of that self-coaching going on peer to peer, and also gave a place where we could watch and see who are the emerging leaders, right? Who's got the gift of gab, so that they have social leadership within the within the user group, within the user base. So those are our emerging leaders for administrative roles within the company. And then also, who are the technical leaders? Who are the ones who are like, bam, they just, they're the go-to. They are the oracle for finding out the technical answers to anything related to that software. And those, those people going, okay, we want to keep them on a technical track and there's so much value in what they're doing that we want to encourage that and keep them on an advancing role. We've got to help them with a career plan that'll encourage that skill, that talent, and continue to develop it. So now you get your training plan. What you need, step 5 is test. Let's start to implement something. Test small. Now, in my book, Perform or Perish, what we did at that factory, instead of changing over, reorganizing the entire factory within the 4 walls of the building at one time, we said, okay, let's take this production line. We took the largest, most impactful production line in terms of volume out of the 4 they had operating in that particular operation. And in 2 weeks, we reset the manufacturing line. What does that mean? We had our design, we had our steps, said, okay, here's what the new process looks like. This is what we're going to implement and change. This is the training we need to provide. In 2 weeks, we implemented all of that so that the new process could start running. Then we measured the result for the following 2 weeks, coached them through challenges that came up, the team that was running that new production line. And at the end of 2 weeks, we had our test case and we had our numbers that validated that, yes, it did work. We had a 40% improvement in productivity in 14 days. It took another 10 days, right? Well, work week, 2 work weeks. And then we invested 2 other work weeks to validate those numbers. It's like, is this going to hold? What issues are going to come up? And then said, all right, now we can move forward with the rest of the plan. You need to do that. But we knew what training to provide and what we needed to do to coach them after they implemented the new system and continue to support them so that they didn't start disassembling it and going back to old practices. Now, some of that included making sure that the equipment for the old process was no longer available. Sometimes that's not possible. It's not. Sometimes it's not that physical and tangible, right? With an administrative process, with a software process, say you put a new piece of software in, in this case specifically artificial intelligence software, put that in place, so now it becomes a major control point in an administrative process. It could be assessing risk on accepting a payment plan for a particular client, especially when you're working with big numbers, right? As your company grows, when you're getting into $500,000, $1 million contract, if they're going to be paying over time while you're delivering service, what's your risk in that? Maybe an assessment that you're doing for that. Maybe project status, where you're looking for risks and weaknesses within the project as part of the project management system, and adding an artificial intelligence component to that. Or it could be the provider of the system you use has done that. Many companies are rapidly integrating tools like that. Well, how does that affect your process? What changes and what training around those changes needs to be delivered for your team? So now you've tested small. Here's the thing. Step 6, ongoing coaching. How do you continue to coach and support your direct reports and your team within your company in order to keep this process sticking and to work out challenges that come up? Because there will be challenges, right? And you know that nothing gets implemented perfectly to plan. In fact, as soon as you start implementing it, plan's done. You need to start adapting. You go, here's what we thought we were going to do. Reality now has a vote, right? Whereas the military says, first point of contact, plan always comes apart because the enemy gets a vote. So reality has a vote. You need to start adapting to that. The plan's the guide at that point. But how do you coach and guide your team to make sure that you sustain the gains that you've made and continue to make more gains, so that it becomes now about finding ways to continue to improve, continue to innovate until it's time to put the next new piece of artificial intelligence or other major technology change, or technology that will change your business processes, in place. So that's 6 quick steps with a 0 step. So 7 total, right? So 0 is why. Why are you doing this? What's your measurable benefit expected to be? So that's where your starting point. 0. You need to do that before you do anything else. Then you baseline. What's the current process look like from the customer's perspective, and how does it affect customer experience? See, and your why should be stated and tied into customer experience, employee experience, because that's where you're going to get measurable business improvement, by affecting those experience of employees, experience of customers. So baseline, define the improvements that you're going to implement. What's the technology? How does it change the process? So now you can chart. In the third step, chart out what the new process looks like now that this new technology is embedded in it. The fourth, initiate the training that needs to happen around the new process procedures, using the new technology, interacting with the artificial intelligence that is being embedded in this new process, and coaching, being prepared to coach these the people that are using the new process. So that'll be supervisors coaching those folks, you and your direct reports coaching first line management, and then also having some type of user group or peer interaction coaching, so that the knowledge base spreads faster. Otherwise, you create a choke. Otherwise, you get a choke point on knowledge, and that's old 1980s IT thinking. And that was even before we called it IT. Really, it was just the data, the data department, or the folks running the computers. But what we call IT today creates a choke point there, and it's unfair to the IT folks, and it's unfair to those that need to use the new systems. And then the fifth step is test small. Take a piece out of that plan and go, okay, this is where we can get a quick success. We can do this in 30 days or less to test and see, are we on the right track? Now, software, if you're in the software world, there's part of that is sandbox. So this may sound like sandboxing software, and it is part of the sandbox process where you test it before you go live, so you don't release something into the wild that does damage. But that's part of your testing. Then you need to set that up, and however it is, to either sandbox it so that it's not going to affect something. If it's a physical process, you need to run the physical process a small part of the physical process, before changing over an entire company on the new process. And then the last step, 6, is ongoing coaching. you provide the ongoing coaching and support to your direct reports as a key executive, as a business owner, and make sure they are prepared to coach the people that are actually running the process day in and day out. You do that, and you're going to be in that 30% that actually does get the business benefit they wanted. But I'll tell you what, it goes a lot deeper than that. It's really going to put you in a much rarer position. You're going to be more likely to be in the top 10%, top 5% or better, because most companies don't do that, don't go through that process, and it doesn't go well. And the two places where I see lots and lots of failures, personal experience, lots and lots of failures are in the training, because it's easy to not spend the money and the time on the training. Then that creates a failure in knowledge, and it takes way, way longer to build up experience and mastery of the new process. And even more impactful is the coaching. Most companies don't do the coaching on and support on the implementation, which if you're doing that, you'll catch deficiencies in the training before it becomes a major problem with your implementation. And as a key executive, as a business owner, the coaching, that's really in your wheelhouse too. That's one of your key roles as a leader in the company. So there's quick 7 steps that will get you from where you're at today to knocking it out of the park with artificial intelligence. And you can sit back and watch as your competitors fail and flounder because they don't have the recipe, so they can't bake the cake. Thanks for being part of Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf, and I look forward to seeing you on the trail. Oh, wait a minute. Wait, not yet. Not bailing out just yet. Ernest Odell. Hey, Ernest, thanks so much for being part of the conversation. Glad you're watching today. And thank you for watching as well. I'm Wolf. This is Wolf's Watch. I'll see you on the trail.